to webinar 2 of the Living Legacy series. Before we dive in, I'd love to hear where you all are coming from. Let us know in the chat. I see we've got folks from many different parts of the world. We've got an amazing lineup of speakers today. Today's webinar is called Generations of Soil Food Web Practice Across Landscapes with Todd Harrington, Vivian Kaloxilos, and Jo Tobias. So this is one of a five-part series honoring Dr. Elaine Ingham and celebrating the Soil Food Web Foundation. My name is Evan Buckman. I'm the new executive director of the Soil Food Web School, and we're going to get started here in just a couple of minutes. Before we dive in, I'd just love to give the speakers a moment to introduce yourselves. Todd, do you want to start first?
Sure. I'm honored to be here. And this is a very interesting time with myself and my business. And I'm really excited to be involved in Elaine's legacy. So yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Vivian, you jump in next.
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm also really happy to be here to celebrate Elaine and all of her work with my two best buddies in the regeneration soil food web world, Todd Harrington and Jo Tobias. And it's also an interesting time in my life career for this to be happening. So just glad to be back with the community today.
Lovely. And Joe, can you say hi to everyone?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me here today, and I'm honored to be a part of this webinar. Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, really excited to hear what y'all have to share. We'll just move along and share a little bit about the series as a whole. Last week, we had Daniel Turkiel and Adam talking about the lessons hidden in the ecological monograph. That recording is available online. This is webinar 2, and we're doing a webinar every Thursday this month with recordings posted to YouTube. We're going to have a fifth part as well, which will be a community house party on World Soil Day, December 5th. Um, so that was last week's webinar. Again, lessons from the ecological monograph, really fascinating conversation and a lot of new research that they shared from some of the work that they're doing in the UK. Next week, we're going to have Celine talking about soil as a national defense and a strategic resource at a national level. She's doing really incredible work around the world. So definitely tune in for that one too. And then the following week, we'll have Nick Tomasini, who'll be joining us, sharing about some of his experience as a soil food web consultant and some of the latest work going on in his part of the world in Oregon. So without further ado, oh, and the World Soil Day, of course. This is always a really fun time. Folks tuning in from all over the world will have lots of different breakout rooms talking about different components of the work we do here. And yeah, just different conversations for folks to meet one another and connect with other peers from around the world. All of these are open to the public, so everyone is welcome to join. Um, and just a little bit of an overview of the flow today. Pretty quick introduction here. And each speaker will have about 20 minutes to share. And then we'll talk a little bit about the current offer that we're promoting at the school with the foundation courses. And we'll go into a question and answer for the remainder of the time. So please put your questions in the chat and we'll be sure to prioritize them and get to them for what will surely be a stimulating conversation towards the end of the webinar today. So with that, Todd, do you want to take it from here and
Sure, sure. Quick intro. My name's Todd Harrington. Thank you for having me. I'm going to age myself a little bit here, but I started working in this field back in the early 90s. Um, and I've had the opportunity to do a lot of really cool projects over the years. I learned a lot of things on those projects, a lot of real world experience while at the same time I learned a lot from Elaine. Um, again, I've had the opportunity to work on a lot of these projects, not only in the United States, but in other countries. And a lot of it was because of Elaine. So I can't thank her enough for, all these wonderful opportunities, both learning and also business-wise opportunities too. Um, so um, I don't know if this is going in right order here. Sorry, I'm just practicing with a little clicker here, so that looks right. I'm going in the right direction here. So obviously, we're all here to celebrate Elaine's legacy. It's totally an honor to celebrate Dr. Elaine Ingham, both mentor, scientist, and dear friend, whose work reshaped how we understand soil life and its role in sustaining the ecosystem in agriculture worldwide. Um, so again, I had the opportunity to get involved in one of Elaine's first soil food web advisor groups back in the 90s. I would say late 90s, early 2000s is really when we started forming a group, an organization of like-minded individuals from around the United States. I think we might have had a few outside the United States at that time, but I'm going back a couple decades here, so I apologize if I am off on dates a little bit. Um, but anyhow, so this is one of our annual advisor workshops. This one was in Hudson Valley, New York. This was in 2017. We actually started these advisor groups, and I had a hard time finding any photos going back to the mid 2000s. We were actually having advisor meetings, and we were a group that formed probably in 2005, I think it was. There was a bunch of us, but anyways, I don't think we had cell phones back then, so we didn't take as many pictures. So this was in Hudson Valley, New York. This was a great workshop advisor group. Both Vivian and Jo were there. And Jo, where are you? Are you hiding somewhere? I'm looking and I don't see you. But she's there. I'm pretty sure she was there. And so at we actually had two that year, which I wasn't aware of until I started looking for photos. So this was the first one was in October. It was a little cold that day, if you guys remember, in Hudson Valley, upper state New York. But we had a great time and we learned a lot. And one of the really cool things about the advisor meetings is that we each got to present to the group, some of our case studies, which was really great to learn from each other on our case studies. We're all learning at the same time. And the next one was held in the wintertime in Corvallis, Oregon. It was a smaller group, and you can't really see the photo too well, but I think Jo was in there and Vivian. Jo, were you there? I'm not sure if you were at that one. I don't see you in the photo, but that was in Corvallis. Vivian, you remember that one. So that was a really great time. We learned a lot from that one. But again, it was really, really fantastic that we get to learn from each other and have these advisor meetings annually, and share our data and share our case studies together. It's a wonderful time. So from land care to living soils, so basically on my end, I'm founder and principal of Harrington's Organic Land Care based in Connecticut. I spent over 40 years, I know I'm aging myself here, but in regenerative land care. And again, I say I'm aging myself, but I feel like I'm just starting to understand and learn, you know, what I've been doing for the last 40 years. It's really exciting times because technology now is so advanced that things are happening really, really quickly. Um, but anyhow, I've spent over 40 years in regenerative land care, both composting and soil biology and soil ecology. So my work has spanned from North and Central America. I've had a few projects in Europe, and I still have some projects in Europe, also Western Asia and the Middle East, focusing on microbial analytics, composting, liquid compost systems, and soil restoration. I've had a few projects with BP and other gas and oil companies and Reclamation using the soil food web principles. And the foundation of it all began with the soil food web. Um, really the turning point for me was at Acres, and I think it was 1995, it was somewhere 94, 95. After hearing Dr. Elaine Ingham speak at Acres USA, one of the conferences on soil food web, after she spoke, I walked out and I was like, oh my gosh, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this. My entire paradigm has shifted. Elaine showed that the key lies in living soil biology of the soil, the complex interaction among bacteria, fungi, and protozoa, and nematodes, and microorthopods that sustain plant life. I was like, wow, that was the missing link. That was the catalyst of everything I had been doing for years, working with organics. I just didn't understand why the organics worked and why they didn't work. And it was just a complete shift in my thinking once I saw Elaine speak that at Acres USA. Um, so it was then that I had realized that pesticides and chemical fertilizers we were using were only band-aids. And Elaine often described this as treating the symptoms and not the disease. It pretty much says it right there. That moment was transformative for me. And I realized that the soil food web was the missing link in my understanding of soil care and plant vitality. It became the foundation for everything that followed, including using compost and compost teas in all my programs and in all my businesses moving forward. So seeing the living soil for the first time was, you know, really inspiring. And when Elaine, she really opened the window into the invisible world that I was unaware of until I started learning to use the microscope with Elaine. Under the microscope, I saw the entire universe of bacteria, fungi, protozoa, nematodes working together. And interesting enough, I had met other specialists and ecologists and biologists, pathologists, etymologists, mycologists, and there wasn't one person at that time that looked at the interaction of all these different organisms and looked at the interplay and the relationship and how it worked in the soil. There was no one at the time that had looked at all those different organisms or communities, and uh, and that's one of the reasons why I was so interested in Elaine's work because she kind of looked at the whole picture and also how they interacted with soil, nutrition and minerals. She wasn't necessarily a chemist, but she understood chemistry well enough and understood that relationship with biology and chemistry. And that's what really brought it home for me is that interaction, that predator-prey interaction, and the how minerals become, available to plant in the metabolite form, and it's all because and related to biology. It was the moment I realized soil health could be measured, managed, and restored through biology rather than chemistry. So this photo is actually at my lab. The photo to the right, in 2008 when we opened up. I think we were like the second soil food web lab in the United States. There was the Oregon soil food web in Oregon. I think it was Corvallis originally. Is that right, guys? I think so. And then there was New York, Paul Wagner in New York, and then I opened up the third soil food web lab. There was actually one in Canada for a little while, but I don't know what happened with that. It was Tim Livingston had a lab up there. And so anyhow, we set up a lab, and that was my first lab manager, PhD Shendrapa. He was wonderful. He really helped us set up the lab with Elaine, and we moved very quickly. And it was great having a lab in-house because I was doing a lot of consulting even back then for a lot of my commercial accounts. It was great to have an in-house lab. We did hold these annual Soil Food Web Advisor courses for almost 5 years in a row. We may have even done six in a row, and then we skipped a few years. But the photo and to the right down below is actually in our lab. So we had a 3-day course. Lane would come every year, and we taught compost technology, compost tea technology, and then we had the microscope course on the third day, and it worked out really well. It was a lot of fun, and we attracted a lot of people. We were always full. Our limit was like 21 people, and every single course we were at limit and at capacity, so it was really really great, a great time. Um, so translating science into practice, working with Elaine taught me how to take the soil food web from theory to field. We developed compost systems, extraction methods, and liquid biological amendments. that brought microbial diversity to degraded soils with all our projects, both locally and internationally. The soil food web became the practical science behind regeneration. So, like I mentioned earlier, I became a soil food web advisor in 2005, which was kind of the beginning of the advisor group. And then I got recertified in 2022 through the foundation courses. I figured I kind of needed a refresher, so I went through that in 2022. Um, so, passing the torch on, Elaine inspired a generation of practitioners to observe, measure, and restore soil life. Together, we train land managers, farmers, scientists around the world to use the soil food web approach as the foundation for ecological land care. A shared vision for living soils. Elaine and I shared a deep belief that healthy soil biology is the foundation of planetary health. And, to me, when we work in the soil, I truly believe that when we really get the soil restored and productive, plants become medicine. Our collaboration combines her scientific insight with my on-the-ground land care experiences, creating programs that restore the landscape and change practices at scale. The soil food web goes global, from small and large farms to international estates. The soil food web model has transformed soil management in our projects across Nicaragua, Mexico, Guatemala, Europe, Canada, Western Asia, the Middle East, and in the US. We've seen degraded soils revived and plant health restored by rebuilding biology. Lane's vision has become a global movement, as we all know. Um, Continuing the evolution, the soil food web approach will continue to evolve with data, technology, and education. We are developing microbial dashboards, compost analytics, and regional training centers that empower future generations to carry Elaine's legacy forward. For the soil for the future, Elaine, your life's work taught us to see unseen, to recognize that soil is alive, that healing begins underground. Thank you for your wisdom, your generosity, and your unshakable belief in the power of biology. Thank you. Hopefully,
Thank
I
you,
covered
Todd.
all that in a timely manner.
Absolutely.
20
Thank
years,
you.
30 years.
Thank you so much for sharing such incredible stories, and I can only imagine the richness of experience that comes with navigating through all those chapters, and yeah, how much the world has changed in all that time, largely thanks to the work that you all did together. So thank you so much for sharing that. And everyone, please, if you have any questions for Todd, put them in the chat. We'll circle back to them at the end. But Vivian, do you want to take the mic next and share what you have to say with everyone?
Yeah, sure. I'm gonna share my screen. Ooh. Is this working for you guys?
Um,
It's not working. 1 second.
yeah, I think it's working. I think it's just taking a moment to load.
Uh, how about now? Good?
Yeah, it's good. You're good,
Okay.
Vivian.
Okay. Hi, everybody. It's I think we're gonna be all kind of saying this today. It's really a pleasure to be here and an honor to be part of this celebration for somebody who has um, contributed to making the world a brighter place of possibility. Dr. Elaine Ingham and her extraordinary contributions to the field of soil ecology, soil science, and just ecological understanding. Here, I gotta change this. So I'm Vivian Kaloxilos. I'm based in Quebec, and I was fortunate enough to work really closely with Elaine for many years as one of her students, as a one of the original mentors in the Soil Food Web School, and as a collaborator to bring soil biology and just the concept of living soils to the forefront of agriculture and ecological discussions and practices. Um, and I've had a lot of fun um, with this work. Her work opened up a door that changed my life. I was a trained applied field ecologist from McGill School of Environment and the Smithsonian Tropical Research Institute. And I almost dropped out because we were only learning about problems and we were only learning how to measure degradation. And I discovered permaculture. I dove deep down into that. And Elaine's work really just opened this door to bridge these two practices as an applied field ecologist and permaculturalist, where we were now applying earth principles. Um, and she offered me the tools to be able to actually measure that underground, aside from what we're seeing um, with our eyes. So um, I want to talk about I want to talk about the work that she did, and I want to talk about our relationship. And maybe if I have time to share a case study, I will. Um, for me, Elaine was the woman who spoke up for life on Earth. Because when I first heard about Elaine, I was in university, and I had heard about a woman who got up um, at a conference in Madrid um, to try to stop a company from releasing this genetically modified bacteria, Klebsiella planticola, which was modified to produce ethanol as a waste product. And they were going to release it is debated, but it was going to be released into the world. And at the time, the world did not have protocols and checks for releasing and bringing genetically modified organisms into ecosystems. And it was Elaine's testimony and presenting her research in 1995 in Madrid that ended up changing the minds of many leaders of scientific delegates of developing world countries, that ended up becoming the basis of a global movement for a protocol on biosafety on GMOs. And that treaty was finally adopted in the year 2000 in Montreal. Um, and it remains the cornerstone of the global GMO regulation still today. And I remember hearing about her, or not even her, just this scientist, and thinking, thank God for whoever this person is. um, and then we met in 2013 at the Permaculture Convergence in Fredericksburg in Quebec. And I realized that scientist was her. And at the time, I had finished my degree in training, and I had a farm, which was a degenerated corn, it was pottery clay cracking. The ecosystem was mosquitoes, and I wanted to be a market gardener, but we had to regenerate it. And I was just kind of doing my thing intuitively with my training as an ecologist and permaculturalist. And when I met Elaine, um, so many things just made sense. And immediately she took me under her wing and I became a student. She bought me my first microscope that was my own. And there it is. She really invested in me, and I'm always so grateful for her for that. She really allowed me to bring the science behind something that would have otherwise just been kind of esoteric. Um, so I'm really grateful for that forever. And then, for me, she's also the woman who saw life when everybody else was just saw the earth as this like dirty, inert place. And she really brought that concept of a living earth to the world. And um, since our meeting, we were just like constantly exchanging ideas and going down rabbit holes. And this is a picture of a still of her and I. We would do podcasts together and just ramble on for an hour and a half, an hour and 45 minutes about different things. Some of those are still up. And this is just, I wanted to put this here because I remember distinctively an aha moment because Elaine often just blew people's minds with aha moments. She's with her brilliant way of connecting dots. Um, and before Elaine, very like Todd said, very few people had an understanding of soil ecology and the way that that relates to plant health, the way that relates to ecosystem services and functions, carbon sequestration, water infiltration, just self-organizing ecosystems. So I mean, I just, there's not enough that can be said about her impact on the world. And she kept promoting me as a speaker and as a consultant. As a student, I was the first Canadian, one of her first Canadian consultants. And so she kept passing me all this work and she encouraged me, she gave me the the courage to embark on my entrepreneurship journey. And I opened my company, Docteur, which is a pun, I mean, a French pun in Quebec. And yeah, she gave me the courage to stand as a young woman and speak and represent and serve soil ecosystem services and functions. Um, Yeah, and it made more sense. It took me off my path of becoming a market gardener, but it made more sense for me. And she was just an amazing support there with me the entire time. And some of these aha moments that we lived led for me, I was working with Soil Food Web. I was a mentor. I was promoting the schools. A lot of you maybe have seen me, or I maybe helped some of you guys join the courses and stuff. But through these aha moments, um, we still felt there was like this urgency to uh, make living soils the front and center piece of discussion in the discourse of agriculture and ecology and human culture. And her passion fueled mine. And it ended up where I organized with some other ladies here in Montreal the Living Soil Symposium in 2017. And she was a huge weight behind that. And it was a testament to how many people were impacted by Elaine, the types of politicians and farmers and guest speakers and scientists from around the world who were all there as guest speakers and who were all had been brought on this track because of Elaine's work, because of the ecological monograph that was published. There were 600 people for 3 days. Um, and from there, from the at least here locally, the biggest trend became Soil Food Web and living soils, and yeah, couldn't none of this could have happened without her. And aside from the amazing uh, scientist, woman, mentor, teacher that she was like she was like a family figure to me. She was a grandmother figure in my life. Um, she came out, she met my parents. She went on a rabbit hole conversation. Her and my mom hit it off for their passion. My mom's a naturopath, and they just went on about the vortexes between these two worlds, and also their shared love for shoes was another thing that came up. Um, She helped pick out my outfits and dress me for this conference because I didn't know how, and I had never given a big talk like this, and she was just there the whole way, and I had to wear all of my mom's clothes, and instead of going to her hotel room and rest every day, she would do this detour 45 minutes both ways just to come with me and walk my dog. Like we had good times. So there's also that aspect that I wanted to mention. And this is her with Jean-Martin Fortier, the market gardener, in the same trip. A little um, photo op here, candy for the community. And of course, she was an amazing teacher. I mean, the knowledge that is being passed on to us about the soil food web. Um, I mean, as Todd has said, and as Jo will go into, I'm sure, it is completely paradigm busting, and it brings us back to reality that life isn't driven by chemistry. Life is driven by life. And although the science is really young and we do not have all the answers, just this contribution has just shifted and opened a whole new realm of possibilities for a better future that is more aligned with what's true of how this earth functions. Um, and so she's really living a legacy and leaving us a legacy. There's very few people in the world whose work not only helped to contribute change the scientific discussion, but also how a culture sees its understands its place in this world, and how we relate and are involved with all the rest of the web of life. Um, and Elaine gave us those new eyes. All those years I studied soil and ecology at McGill, Smithsonian. Um, Nobody talked about soil ecology. Um, and while permaculture was applying principles, um, she was offering a way to quantify these changes. So it's just her courage to speak out, to stand up, to speak for life. Um, and all that she faced, all the persecution, all the backlash and the personal sacrifice. She was devoted to this work. And I remember her saying, you know, she wished she could have many lifetimes where she could just come back and keep doing this work because there's so many things she's curious about and wants to explore. And that's the responsibility, that's the legacy that we have, as her students and the future ones, is to continue this work because we have not figured it out yet, and it's something that will take time. And her unwavering faith in life just brought life back to so many people. And I stand here as one of her students and one of the torchbearers that will continue to speak for life, and will continue to work to work out the nuances of how this work really can be applied in the reality of a farmer and all kinds of landowners to regenerate life on Earth and to regenerate soil and agriculture and human culture as well. So today, yeah, we're honoring Elaine for her lifelong legacy and devotion, and with every field restored, every compost pile attempted, every student, and every farmer now listening to the messages of their soil, um, and acting on behalf of that. This legacy goes on, and hallelujah. Thank you so much, Elaine, for this. And I just want to say it's a little touchy here. Is the last time I saw Elaine was in 2018. Our friendship and collaboration ended suddenly, and it was not my choice, but just through circumstances that tested the strength and the trust within our community. And it was one of the great heartbreaks of my professional and personal life. And even though we haven't spoken since, my heart holds so much gratitude and love for her. And I believe that sometimes life brings us these moments of rupture, not to take away from what was shared, but to actually show us the depth of what it was. And if you're watching, Elaine, just know that I carry your teachings and your spirit forward with me. And I'm sending you so many blessings of peace and rest. And I honor all that you've given to me and to the world through your work. And the years that followed weren't easy. I could have used Elaine's voice, that powerhouse of a voice, uh, as I faced and continue to face legal challenges in finding a way to exist as a soil ecologist in Quebec, where agronomist institutions still struggle to recognize that living soil belongs to us all. And it doesn't belong to one profession, and that the expertise of soil ecology and soil regeneration is not exclusive to them. Um, so, but these challenges reinforced in me kind of the teachings of soil resiliency and ecosystem relations that she taught me, that life always finds a way, and that the truth and life spreads best nice and nestled and covered underground, nice and warm, well hydrated, quietly, like the mycelium, unseen. Everything happens for a reason. And yeah, so over time, my practice has continued to expand through what I learned from her, and I've integrated other disciplines and fields of experiences and um, through other collaborations. And I feel like myself and so many others are expanding upon this legacy that she leaves us to try to complete the puzzle of how to make this work in the reality of farmers. And um, I wanted to talk about a case study today. If I still have time, I still have about 5 minutes. Um, because I stopped teaching consultants and I started teaching farmers. And in the end, that was the best thing for me to do because um, there's a lot of farmers that are being tossed around from a lack of knowledge and receive bad bad advice and are being kind of tossed around through malpractice. And our ecosystems have been suffering through overdosing of nutrients and synthetics that were not required. And when farmers are empowered with knowledge, this greatly diminishes. When farmers are empowered with knowledge, they become the stewards of their land. And that's what we really need. We really need that. And, Todd and I have seen, and I'm sure Jo too, that the farmers who succeed and continue this work and don't give up are those who have invested in their education. Oh, yeah, I forgot this was here. Um, yeah, and this opened up the door to me working more with Todd and Ray, and this is kind of the dynamic that we have. It's good that you gave him his own time because I'm always cutting him off. We have a good time teaching farmers around the world together with the combo of, my way of speaking and Todd's knowledge and experience. It's really a kick butt duo, and we're about to head to where are we going? Washington State next week to train 300 farmers in fertility, sovereignty, and regenerative agriculture. So this is all the legacy continuing on. All started with Elaine. Um, just quick here. This case study is kind of fun because it starts off kind of classic soil food web, and then it ventures off the path into maybe absurd ideas that worked out. So if there's time here, should I just go into this real quick or should we
Yeah,
leave it
absolutely.
there?
Go ahead.
Yeah, so um, after the soil symposium, there was a farmer, like maybe a couple years later, that called me, and Jean-François here in Quebec. He farms 2,000 acres of cereals and corn and soy. And he had transitioned to being organic in 2014. He had just simply stopped his urea applications, and he was already no-till or minimal till in using cover crops. But over the years, his crops declined, his yield declined, and he was making compost tea, like YouTube learning, um, with compost that had nothing in it. Um, and so he called me, and he was in a total panic because he basically was not even breaking even with his yields that kept declining. And here he is, though, happy after our first year trials in a spot where nothing would even grow previously. So it's just classic, his soils were perfect. In the agronomic point of view, rich organic matter, high, like per good pH. The soil hadn't been tilled. It wasn't compacted. The drainage was good. He was doing he was doing agroecological some principles, nice cover crops, but his soil would dry out drastically, and his yields were incredibly low. And so of course, I go and dig a hole, and I could smell like burnt tires. And he forgot to tell me that he was advised to put 30 to 40 tons per hectare of paper mill sludge on his soils to increase organic matter for 15 years. And there is tons of chemicals in that. And the idea was to increase organic matter. Uh, it starved out the nitrogen. It messed up with the CN ratio of the soil, and it absolutely shocked the life in the soil. Um, so this kind of work, when we show up with our microscopes and we can validate that it's not the farmer who's crazy, that is something wrong. There was such a lack of life. There was no fungi. There were a few nematodes, but the soil food web was completely off whack. He was accumulating resources through cover crops and organic matter, but it was not turning. It was not cycling. So this is one of the not so common cases where just adding in biology made for a huge explosion, because it's not always the case. Um, Usually adding in biology will always make a difference, but uh, it won't completely get rid of all the synthetics and nutrients and all the other things. There's way, way, way more work to do, but I'm just going to stick with this here. So we taught him how to make real compost extract, and we brought him our biologically complete compost. And this was just his 10 hectare trial just on his cover crops to see real quick. At the end of the year, he saw what he needed to see. Um, and this is a farmer who was pretty desperate and pretty sick of being told that there was nothing wrong with the soil, and all the bad advice. He didn't know who to listen to. So through education, um, it really helped him to be able to, no, I don't want to listen to you. I'm going to listen to you. And I have this idea. And for us as soil consultants to bring that validation and be like, that's a good idea. Let's explore that avenue. Because as as people who accompany farmers, we don't have the answers. I'm actually not a consultant. I'm a teacher, and we jam. They know farming, I know ecology. And together, you know, I teach them what I know, and they're the ones with the knowledge that are going to come up with the ideas of how it works in their reality. And we try it out and we see what happens. And we're there to help explain the why and the how of of the response that the landscape is giving us. Um, and after seeing enough results, we got proper equipment here. This is Todd's Cadillac extractor that he got, and we equipped ourselves properly to spray over 2,000 acres. And it was working so well that EcoCert, which is the certifying body in Canada, came to investigate Jean-Francois because they thought he was cheating with synthetic nitrogens all of a sudden, because suddenly his crops looked amazing. And they showed up to find that we were using compost extract. And we've been doing events ever since with EcoCert on the farm. Every year we have 75 to 100 farmers show up, large scale farmers, to see this in action. And as you can see, the yields were dramatically increasing. Whoops. And I put this asterisk here because in 2021, it was the worst drought on record for decades here in Quebec. But also, the yields the year before were so bad that he didn't even pick up anything. So there was an increased amount of carbon material and diversity of plants for us to decompose with our extracts in the fall. And we think that's part of why there is this huge yield bump. And then it kind of goes back down, but still, we're still seeing a general trend. And in 2022, oh, here, beautiful spot that wouldn't even grow before. Look at this guy is like 6'5". I mean, look at this. And this was year one. These are pictures from year one. Um, and it was convincing enough for this farmer, and he keeps being educated. I keep pointing him to things to learn. We modified this sprayer just for extracts. And then in 2022, he he stopped buying cover crop seeds and just letting the soil grow whatever it wanted to grow. The wild permanent cover crop trials began. And we started this on a small scale. And we started using strip till in this permanent cover crop with solar corridors. And um, we modified the strip tiller to apply compost extract at the depth. And I know we're pushing for time here, but part of what makes regenerative agriculture possible is not just the knowledge, but it's also the infrastructure and the equipment, which Todd, I mean, Todd's the guy for this, but this allowed him to, this machine, the Roland Sem, which I will show you. Um, this is the strip till extractor. Hold on. That's us doing here. I mean, the farmers are all up in this. Here's the Roland Sem. So it allows you to grow along in the strip. It allows you to grow in the strip while leaving a living, diverse, self-selected cover crop in the middle. And it allows you to mow the strip and keep the photosynthetic advantage to your crops. In a minute here, this is going to turn around and we're going to see what this looks like. So he's passing the Roland Sem. Look at this. And we leave the soil covered. And it's not cutting, it's just crimping them down. And so the ecosystem services and functions, I mean, his neighbor is infested with aphids. He's in the part of Quebec that sprays the most insecticide to deal with aphids on soya. He has no insecticide and no aphid damage, or very minimal, in his soy. So, I mean, this is just the power of creating ecosystems. And I mean, the yields are very decent, especially since he has absolutely no fertilizer inputs. We make plant ferments because this is something I do believe in, the not just aerobic organisms, but we do need the facultative anaerobes and support of good nutrition as well. Um, I just want to go here. It's been really interesting with the wild permanent cover crop because we're seeing the ecological succession, and every year the plants that are showing up are changing. At the beginning, there were lots of what we call weeds. There were lots, and then there were lots of different nitrogen fixtures showing up, and then grasses started showing up, and perennial flowers and herbs start showing up. And this year, when we leave things grow at the beginning of the year, we had to sow really late because of weather in the fall. We now have things like elderberry growing. and And it's just showing the succession and the fungal and the soil life is just, I didn't have time to put this in, but we have his daughter who's a biologist trained on the microscope documenting everything. And would have to be for another time. Um, so his costs are really, really low. He doesn't buy cover crop seeds. He doesn't use inputs other than the plant extracts he makes and the compost. So this is him speaking. Taking time to understand things is the biggest issue for farmers in regenerative agriculture. I realized two things about reviving my soil fertility: the importance of soil life and the balance between fungal and bacterial communities, and the need to produce carbon crops in the field. But this means I need to rethink my farming and design practices. It's hard to accept things we cannot see, but we need to believe in them. With the microbes, you must be patient because you may not see results immediately, but you will see them over time much faster than if you didn't work with them. It's the sum of our actions that will make the difference. Plus compost extract, we can make it ourselves at the farm. And I think that's really great for farmers. My system's improving and I trust the process. And this, I have gone from being a farmer to an orchestrator. This is the words of a farmer. I have gone from being a farmer to an orchestrator of synergistic actions, which together regenerate my farm, the symphony of life on my farm. Wow. Educated farmers with this perspective. If there were more of these, I have no doubt for the future of this planet. So that's what I wanted to present today. I went a little over time. Thank you for letting me finish, and I'll pass it over to Jo.
Thank you so much, Vivian, for sharing those stories and such a heartfelt expression of gratitude and celebration for Elaine. And thank you for bringing that into the practice. Elaine did so much to further the science and the understanding that people around the world have. But I think one of the things that made her so unique is that it was all about putting it into practice. If it wasn't changing lives and in a real meaningful way. And I think what you demonstrated there is what it's really all about. There's a lot of buzzwords that folks get lost in these days. Everyone wants to be regenerative, but really building fertility on farm, really implementing circularity, really promoting soil ecologies and plant ecologies to move through that succession so we can create that sort of resilience and abundance. That's what it's all about. So thank you for carrying that torch forward in such a beautiful way. And with that, Jo, I'll share my screen again and let you take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Vivian. That was so beautiful. That was so inspiring. Um, Evan, is it okay if I share my screen?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, great presentation, Todd and Vivian. I don't know how I'm going to conclude this presentation session because I don't know anything. I don't have anything else to say. You guys just completed. It was a very complete presentation. Thank you for your both for you both. All right, can you see that? Okay,
Yes, we can.
perfect. All right, generations of cell food web across landscapes. So I want to quickly warm up my session with this quote. The major problems in the world are the result of the difference between how nature works and the way people think, by Gregory Bateson. I think this quote fits really well in honoring Elaine's legacy because by her bringing the soil food web into the mainstream, she changed the way we see soil. So she opened the door really to a living world beneath our feet. She made it possible for people like me and like many of you to carry this work forward. And that means not just on farms, but in many places where soil health can really make a difference. Elaine is a pioneer. She not only developed groundbreaking science, she also opened that science up for farmers, for gardeners, and land stewards everywhere. And what I really admired about her is that she never compromised her principles. And despite enormous demand on her time and energy, Elaine gave so much of both to people like me, to people like Todd and Vivian. You heard earlier how she gave a microscope to Vivian, and she really opened up a door for Vivian to walk through, and she basically carried her forward into her journey That's how generous Elaine is. I even remember her just answering questions directly through email exchanges when I would get stuck on something. There was, I don't know if Vivian remembers this, but there was even a time when we had a phone call with Elaine, Vivian, and I, and we were trying to figure out mycorrhiza counts, and really figuring out the logistics on how to do that type of analysis. And back in the day, I remember we also had a Skype group. I think it was just 15 of us at the time. We would pick her brain. She would share information, and she would just tag her on all these scientific articles and get her to review them and get her input and her perspective on it. And then the group grew into something very unmanageable, which then forced us to move towards more of a discussion forum type format. But she was that kind of a person. She was willing to share what she knew, and she was excited to see other people implement the knowledge that she holds. So her legacy is definitely a foundation we all stand on, and a massive space and role for us all to fill. So, a quick introduction of myself. My name is Jo Tobias. I'm the founder of Root Shoot Soils, a living compost specialist and regenerative soil management. So, it was 2015 when I really started on this work, and more recently with sugarcane growers out in Thailand, and teaching them how to basically manage their farm biologically. So my path began 5 years before that, around 2010, when I shifted from computing science to permaculture and then eventually soil ecology. And it was a visit to my family in the Philippines uh, that I saw firsthand the Green Revolution's promise: more technology, more hybridized seeds, and synthetic inputs. And those practices displaced traditional methods. It reduced heirloom rice varieties in my country and even erased edible field weeds from local diets. So those synthetic inputs that were being promoted to farmers, um, the weeds that would typically grow around heirloom rice varieties, that's part of the local community's diet. And that diet was completely erased because of the Green Revolution's methods. So I went looking for teachers, and Elaine's work became my compass, and the rest is history. So now I kind of want to get into the different realms that the soil food web applies to. Across various sectors, the management logic is the same. We hire the biology, we provide them housing and food, and we deploy them at the right times, and as best as we can, retain their population. And if you are doing this type of work and you have clients, obviously you want to show the results so that people could see that this approach works. And it really does. Obviously, your tactics and your strategy will change with context, whether you're working in an orchard setting versus boulevards versus mine spoils. But the principles don't change. If you work with plants, you work with soil, therefore, you inadvertently, by default, really, you work with the soil food web. So, this slide here is the bridge from Elaine's legacy to short practical case studies that I'll be presenting next. So first, I want to start with the impact of the soil food web in the agricultural realm. In agriculture, Elaine always reminded us about resilience, about long-term health, and reducing our dependence on synthetics or chemical inputs, remembering that the soil life have really been around since time immemorial, and they know how to grow plants better than we can. They are, I would say, the best farmers, the best gardeners. Um, yeah, they just know what they can do. And one of those best examples I have is Little Dog Farm with Ian and Kathy Finley, which is a 60-acre polyculture orchard where the fruit will be harvested eventually for cider production. This is a fairly young farm in a sense, where Kathy and Ian just acquired this farm around 2019, and we started working together in late 2020. It was previously an intensively managed farm, and the former farmer grew hay on the fields. And this is what intensive farming does to the soil. Ian and Kathy, they decided to acquire the farm and they wanted to turn it into a polyculture orchard. So Little Dog is one of those case studies where the farmers themselves could see in real time the changes that have been happening over the years since they acquired the farm. So life above finds a way when we restore the foundation below. In 2021, this is what we were working with. By 2022, the cover crop seeds that couldn't germinate in lifeless soil, they germinated. It was almost like the seeds remembered to wake up. When the right conditions are set for them, when they have the microbiome that they can work with, or when the microbiome that is present in the soil can turn them on, they will turn on. And so in 20 around this time or maybe before, Ian decided to spread. When he first acquired the farm, he saw how degraded and depleted the soil was. So he decided to buy 12 different types of cover crop seeds. None of them germinated. It was as if it was just not the right conditions for those plants to wake up. And when we started to incorporate the soil food web approach and Elaine's methods, the following year, with the right amount of moisture, it was like the plants knew what they needed to do. They needed to wake up. And then in 2023, they saw the first flush of mushrooms appear in their orchard. In 2024, salamanders arrived, and then the spiders appeared for the first time. Now in 2025, their young fruit trees are thriving. The cover crops are flourishing, so the foundation is being restored. Just a few weeks ago, Ian sent me a photo of a slug. He saw slugs for the first time. He was so happy. And it's not one of those things that a lot of farmers or a lot of growers would be happy about, seeing slugs in their production system. But for Ian, his mentality is a little bit different. He understands how ecosystems work. And so he sends me a photo of a slug. He was excited about it, but then he followed up with, I guess I gotta get ducks now. So he knows the trophic interactions that he needed to have in his farm so that his farm will stay productive. Because really, at the end of the day, if you're just one person or if you're just a couple on the farm, we want to be able to grow that biology and really have the trillions of species to be your workforce. They are what is going to grow the plant. They're the ones that are going to grow the plants for you. So it's been roughly 4 years since basically they went from moonscape to now a future thriving orchard. So he's still waiting for his trees to produce enough so that he can turn them into cider eventually. One of the really interesting things about this case study is how the area that they're living in, a lot of the farmers around them are industrial farmers. They grow things industrially. And so when they peek into Ian's farm, at first they had a lot of doubts, but now they're a little bit more curious. And so now they're more like, okay, let's try some of the things out that you're doing on your farm on my property. So that's a pretty cool shift. We're not only seeing that shift in the soil or even the life above ground, but even the community around him. So next we have floriculture, which is a branch of agriculture, but instead of growing plants for food, obviously you're growing flowers for beauty and hopefully quality. So again, the principles are the same. Living soil equals thriving plants. So for instance, I work with a microflower farmer and her plants struggled with aphids, with thrips, with weak stems and powdery mildew. So those are issues, a lot of problems in the beginning when we first started working together. And she was just putting down whatever she could to keep her flowers or keep her plants alive. And she would lose flowers at the same time because whatever she was putting on, it just wasn't helping her plants at the end of the day. So she reached out, and within the first growing season, pest pressure, it was practically gone. There were no aphids, there were no thrips that were feeding on her plants. Instead, the grasshoppers came. So I remember one of the conversations that Elaine would talk to us about, and I think she would have the entomologist Thomas Dijkstra, I think on one of her previous webinars, and he was talking about how if you are seeing a change in the insect community in your production system, so you go from aphids and thrips to, say, grasshoppers, you're actually moving in the right direction as far as your plant quality goes. So that's exactly what we are seeing in her farm. So since working with biology, again, pest pressure is reduced, much fewer thrips and aphids. We have an idea now as to why they're coming into her production system. Powdery mildew, when it does show up, she's been able to handle the pathogen naturally without losing yield. So on these photos, you see this white ashy coating on the leaves. That's powdery mildew. She did one treatment in less than 1 week. She knocked back the fungal pathogen pretty significantly. And less than 2 months later, that same plant doesn't even look like it was ever infested in the first place. So a lot of times when farmers have to deal with pathogens or disease, in general, not just farmers, but in general, we tend to go into the mode of a let's apply chemical on a biological problem. I would say turn that perspective around, and if it's life or if it's biology that's causing an issue, there is an imbalance in the system. Why not incorporate the right type of biology that can manage that organism for us? So that's exactly what we were trying to do in this particular scenario. So a few more things we've noticed since working with the soil food web, plants are also showing resilience even where mosaic virus is present. This virus is pretty prevalent in the dahlia community. And a lot of times folks would get afraid of the virus, so they would pull out plants entirely. And so at the very beginning of our conversation, when we started collaborating, we were really working with, I asked her a question. I said, what if we just work on the plant's innate ability to fight off that disease? The virus is here to stay. It's everywhere. It's in the flowers, it's in your tomatoes, it's everywhere. What if we just work with the plant's natural immune system and allow it to manage that virus itself? Because it does have that ability. It has the ability to turn on the proper uh, mechanisms in order to isolate that virus in a certain part of its body. Even though it's showing on the leaves, are the stems affected? If they're not, why freak out? Right? So those are the types of conversations that we would have. And it really turned her perspective around. And at first, she was a bit hesitant, but she's kind of like Ian. She's the type of person that said, you know what, let's try it. Let's be open to this idea. And and ever since then, even though the virus shows up, she just goes, oh, well, maybe it's the flower variety. Let's see where this virus goes, how far it would affect this plant. And if it's really bad, then yeah, we'll pull out the plant. But if it's just showing some symptoms here and there, just let it be. Let the plant do its thing. Another cool thing that we discovered as part of incorporating the soil food web approach, it led to stronger stems and longer vase life. So her florist clients told her that her flowers would actually last up to 3 extra days compared to industrially grown flowers. So it's more robust. Dahlias, if you're familiar with the flower or the blooms themselves, they're massive. And when they collect water, they tend to droop. But in this case, it didn't matter. We were really focusing on that plant's innate ability to protect itself and really working and making sure that the soil microbiome is balanced and well taken care of. And then we allowed them to figure things out on their own. And the effects of that is stronger plant, reduced pest pressure, and overall longer vase life. So that was a pretty cool thing that we never thought we were going to get there, but it was in one growing season that she was able to do that. She also expanded into new species to stretch the season and offer her clients more variety. So not only did Melissa, in this case, the dahlia flower farmer, not only was she changing her perspective on how to work with her soil, she felt confident enough to say, you know what, I think I have the foundation now. I'm going to grow other plants to provide my clients more variety. So it was cool to see her transition in the way she manages her production system, but also how she changed as a business owner. And so now we have municipalities. We're talking about parks, the green infrastructure in an urban context. Municipalities are catching on too, at least some of them. So these are called bioretention cells. They're depressions in the landscapes designed to capture, filter, and treat stormwater runoff. They have a more formal engineered design compared to your typical rain gardens. They are much larger, and these can go on for multiple blocks. So in this case, I work with the city of Vancouver, where I'm based, to improve the capacity of these systems to filter stormwater pollutants before they make their way into the watershed. So these are, I didn't put it on the slide, but these are 3 months difference. So this is what it looked like before. I would typically do a minimum of 3 treatments in these types of systems. If we had to do more, then that's something that I would have to have a conversation with the city. But 3 treatments minimum, and then 3 months later, we would get a flush of growth. A lot of times these plants they're not frequently irrigated, so they grow in high sand environments. And you can imagine how if you have really dry summers, these plants would struggle, but they're doing quite well. So my primary role in this case is to ensure that the plants they put in will survive these conditions. So finally, one of the most exciting frontiers is mine reclamation. These are some of the most degraded lands we face. This particular mine is located here. It's here in BC. It's about 3 hours away from where I am. This is called the copper mine. And this marriage of mine reclamation and the soil food web, this is an emerging seed. It hasn't germinated yet, but I did attend and present at a symposium where the industry gathered together and shared ideas on tackling this massive challenge of reclamation. So, as part of that symposium, I introduced the idea of the soil food web to a room full of geologists, restorationists, wildlife biologists, mining folks. So I'm not working on projects related to this at the moment, but we know that the soil food web approach rebuilds the soil structure. It restores the water cycle. It improves plant growth. It supports nutrient cycling. So why not use the knowledge we received from Elaine and apply it in this context? So to close, Elaine gave us the tools and the courage to act. Her work lives on in every landscape restored using her approach. So she's the mushroom, and she made the underground world, the scientific world, visible and tangible. Those of us who studied with her or that are still studying under her work, we are the spores. And each site where you apply her tools, it becomes your landing pad where biology can establish and spread. And that allows you to spread your mycelium and influence that area. So huge gratitude for her vision, her years of generosity. And yeah, Todd, Vivian, it's been such an honor to be a part of this with you guys. And thank you for having me here today.
Thank you so much, Joe. What a lovely presentation. Yeah, just really love seeing all the different experiences that you've shared there. And fascinating, and I'm exciting to see the work in mine reclamation pick up. I know that will be a huge impact there. We're gonna switch over here for a second, and it looks like we're right on time. I'm just gonna share a little bit about the Soil Food Web Foundation. So for me, this is also my first webinar with in front of the Soil Food Web audience, and what an honor to do that with the three of you. Just such an incredible body of work that each of you represent. And it's really just such an incredible honor to be stewarding the legacy of Dr. Elaine Ingham with such an incredible team here at the foundation. We have a big mission, which is really Elaine's mission, which is to restore and protect the Earth's living systems by empowering communities around the world through education, research, and regenerative practice. We have the Soil Food Web School and also all the practitioners out in the world. And we also want to continue to push the boundaries in terms of developing new science and new research, building upon the foundation, celebrating and working with nature in order to do so. And so on the left and on the right, there are two QR codes. One is for a promotion that we're offering now, which is Elaine's foundation courses, our flagship product at the Soil Food Web School, at the lowest price ever as a part of this uh, Living Legacy, uh, yeah, celebration. Today is the last day of the early worm discount, so you get an extra 10% off if you sign up for today off of the $5,000 normal price. And in addition to the normal experience, we've designed a cohort experience. One thing we heard a lot from the students is that additional opportunities to connect with other peers around the world and to connect with our mentors would be of high value. So check that out if you're interested in joining. And if you'd be willing to support our mission, check out the QR code on the right. Really appreciate any donations. We're really making an effort to make the education that Elaine developed more accessible to folks around the world and to continue to push that mission forward. Feel free to reach out to me directly if you want to get in touch or get involved or if you have any questions. And with that, we will go over to the Q&A. But I'd like to start just with a question for the panelists from myself. Um, so much of what I see at the school is rooted in community and rooted in collaboration. And I know you each have uh, a strong history collaborating with each other, and I just love to hear anything that you might have to share about what it's been like to collaborate with one another and any additional stories you might have from that side of things.
Now does it matter what order we go in?
No, Todd, why don't you go first?
Of course, I have to speak out, right? So I mean, Joe and Vivian make me look bad. As soon as they open their mouth, it's like, okay, I'll let them do all the talking. I'm more of a like, as Vivian knows, I'm like the gearhead. I like to work on equipment and get my hands dirty out in the field. But I'm not nearly as good as these guys are presenting. And Vivian and Joe, that was just a wonderful presentation. My gosh, very inspiring. Um, so I would say, just having the opportunity to network with everybody, including Joe and Vivian, has been really beneficial to me, working with my clients, both here in the States and overseas. Um, One of the challenges that I've had to deal with over the years is working with customers and clients that are somewhat, not really sure if it's going to work. They use the terminology if and maybe, and they want to experiment. I kind of I'm past that stage, to be honest with you, because I've been doing it so long. Obviously, we all know here that it works, but we're still challenged by working with, people and clients out in the world that still question if this works because they're still pretty inundated with the industrial complex, marketing wise, with products. But at this point, they really don't have a choice to start to look at alternative methods and systems for managing their crops because they can't afford it anymore. I mean, I work with a lot of conventional farmers that it's costing them more than they're making. It's gotten absolutely ridiculous. Um, I think it's word of mouth for me, and probably a lot of you guys too. The proof is in the pudding. I mean, the results are pretty much, a tool for us to market our businesses and also to, prove that what, Elaine has started obviously works out in the field. And so that, I think the network we've really developed it's like the soil food web, it is a community of microbes, and we're a community of people that have a lot of respect for Lane and have a lot of experience, and we share our experiences together. We're definitely a community that communicates, which is really important, and we all have very similar ethics and morals. And I think that's what makes us so strong as an organization and as individuals. I know with Vivian and I, we've really connected. We have so much in common. And when we're on projects together, my strengths are her weaknesses, and my weaknesses are her strengths. And I think as an entire community, I think we're evolving as a really powerful entity. So, Jo, Vivian, you want to jump in?
Yeah, what was the question?
I think the question was how has the have the principles of community and collaboration uh, carried through your experience in this field and specifically with the other panelists here?
Yeah. Um, yeah, ecology is all about relationships and soul food web and um, a regenerative culture, as in a culture that accumulates richness over time, um, is anchored in the in community relationships and everybody understanding their functions in the ecosystem and how those stack and overlap, um, and being being humble enough to work in your place in that ecosystem. And um, for me, especially with what I named in my presentation and having felt kind of um, like a lone wolf for a little while, and then also receiving all of these cease and desists from the agronomic orders. Uh, Jo and Todd and our friend Travis too have been. I think I would have maybe abandoned this work if they weren't there, just because even though the passion is just an endless well, um, and the curiosity as well. It's um, it's the people that make the place, you know. So as Todd said, like it's funny because we're here and Todd was like my mentor and I was technically Joe's mentor at Soul Food Web, and now we all just kind of support each other um, and this understanding of synergistic actions in an ecosystem. So I keep dreaming of a day where I can be working on sites and on projects with these people that I love so much and that complete and uplift what I'm able to do. I'm a very good speaker, I'm a very good teacher. I have a way of explaining things. Joe is my geek principal who is like has gone down. Yes, oh my gosh. You are meticulous and so good at what you do. The nematode rabbit hole, I don't know anybody else who's gone that far. And Todd, obviously, with all of his years of experience and building the systems. Like I said earlier, it's about systems and it's not just knowledge, but the machinery, like the machinery and all the John Deere and all the tillers and all the sprayers, they are not made for to support a farmer in doing regenerative actions. we literally have to redesign and modify all of these things. Um, so I'm just so glad that I get to work with Todd, and I'm dreaming of a day of working with Jo. She's West Coast in BC, I'm East Coast in Quebec, holding it down. And um, I was talking with both of these two recently that I need to feel like I'm a part of an ecosystem. I'm kind of done of being isolated, and so I'm excited to be working with Todd and Ray Archuleta and and yeah, it's all about synergistic actions working together. So, what's the best way we can support? We can show up in service to be in support of the farmers who are really the heroes of this story. They're the ones taking the risk. Um, yeah, I think I'll stop there. Leave space for Jo.
I don't have anything else to add. I think both of you covered it.
Oh, yes, you do, Joe. The relationship with microbes in their communities, that mutualism
Yeah,
versus that antagonism. And so I think we're on the mutualism side of things, and you can take it from there.
yes.
Go on. I'm helping you along a little here, Joe.
Well, thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
Thank you all for those answers. And Vivian, thank you for showing up today and for being such a great part of this community. I guess with that, we can jump over to questions from the audience. The first one we have up on the board here says, so much has changed in the world since Elaine began this work over 40 years ago. How have you seen the public understanding of soil ecology change and influence agriculture and environmental care? Todd, do you want to start with that one?
I'm sorry. One more time, Evan. Sorry, I didn't quite absorb all that.
The question says, so much has changed in the world since Elaine began this work over 40 years ago. How have you seen the public understanding of soil ecology change and influence agriculture and environmental care? So how have public perceptions shifted over the course of the last few decades?
Um, well, I think because of social media, the internet, there's um, a lot more people understand and are educated because of how we can communicate to the world. Um, so there's been a real benefit. As much as there's a lot of minutia out there that gets really confusing. Um, and that's the power of persuasion and the power of communication and the power of connection. But I think that a lot more people are educated. They're better educated. And word of mouth is very powerful because of social media and the internet, that we have this ability now to network our vision so much further. And that's the one thing I've really noticed when it comes to public perception. And it's also, people are finally realizing that the way that we're managing and farming soil, and I mentioned it earlier, I've been mentioning it for years, is that when plants are grown in biologically productive soil, then and food becomes medicine. And there's obviously that's where people are craving, is to find healthy food, nutrient dense healthy food grown in biological soils. And that, to me, is where the real trend is going, because people are more educated on getting away from all the pharmaceuticals and eating healthy food from healthy soil.
Excellent. Anyone else have something to add, or shall we go on to the next question?
I want to leave space for Jo.
Putting me on the spot. Yeah, I think that there's definitely a change in how the public understanding of soil, even with the different industries that I'm currently a part of. To me, that speaks volumes in how certain individuals in those specific industries, they're the ones that
Mhm.
are, you know, I guess, forcing that change. right? So if when I'm talking about municipalities or here with the city of Vancouver in particular, it's not the entire parks department that agree with the process, but
Yeah.
there's always one or two people within the municipality that understands how things work, understands the relationships in soil, and they're the ones that are gonna force that shift within the industry. They just happen to stumble upon my work, right? So it's I think it's good to have those networks because it puts less pressure on me to force things to change, and I wouldn't not ever want to be in that position or force people to change. Uh, so when the door is open and these industries decide to walk through, I'm open to share this knowledge with them, and I think that that's where the biggest impact could happen.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Just to carry off of that, Joe, like I've also worked for the last 5 years with a big city and for parks and soccer fields, and there's wildlife conservation and restoration projects, golf courses. Um, it just it's often just an individual or two who are really impassioned and open these doors. And we're seeing it everywhere. Even there's a single biology professor in what we call college here, CEGEP, who we work together to create curriculum and lab assignments that are available to all the school boards now throughout Quebec. Um, and he's just like talking to other biology teachers doing this one at a time. um, the students, the students in the universities that are demanding to learn more about this. So I've had their teachers showing up to my courses to be trained so that they can teach their students. Um, there's yeah, chefs and videographers and documentary makers, and yeah, it's we're doing a good job, guys. Everybody keep it up and do not underestimate yourself and the impact you will have.
Evan, can I just add one more quick,
Yeah,
uh,
absolutely.
maybe, as these guys were talking, I was just thinking about all these projects, but in particular, I've been working for one of the largest landscape companies in the United States. And all it took is one project to show them the benefits of soil biology. A lot of you probably know about the Governor's Island project. And after that, they incorporated certain guidelines and standards in every single specification in landscape architecture across the United States. This firm kind of set the trend, and all the other landscape architects around the world are now starting to follow the same guidelines as this one company. They started about 2012 putting, the soil food web specs into their geoengineered soils. And all it took is that one project to show them the benefit of soil biology. For example, they had a certain contingency loss on their plant material, even though they they designed these beautiful engineered soils, these geotech soils. There was no real life in the soil because they destroyed most of the life in it. And just by doing, incorporating that biology into that soil on one of these projects, their reduction in loss was like, I don't know, 50 to 60%. They had like very little loss. And from then on, they put it in all their specifications. So all it took is one project like that to prove to them the benefits and the power of soil biology.
What a great story. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, incredible what one domino can do to set up a whole chain of reaction. And yeah, I think in light of the theme of today's discussion, just wonderful to reflect on, Elaine as a single human being and what she's accomplished and sending these ripples of impact out across the world through so many of the folks that she trained and empowered. Um, so yeah, let's get on to the next question. The next question from Marco says, hello, I work in Almeria, Spain with greenhouses, and here there is a practice called solarization. covering the soil with plastic, moisture, and leave it for 60 days during the summer, and everybody does it. What do you think about solarization?
Joe's turn to go for up.
I think about microplastics in solarization. Um, I also think about anaerobic conditions in the soil with solarization. And again, this is where the nuance also has to come in. If that's the only option that you have, but at the same time, you're working towards a vision where you want to reduce your use of plastics in the farm, but this is kind of a step towards that. Just keep in mind that when you remove that plastic, and anaerobic conditions could potentially be dominating that system, I would even incorporate an application of compost extract, for instance, to sort of, or even to just allow that area to breathe a little bit more and then bring more biology in there to balance the system. Um, it's a tricky one because again, it's one of those things where uh, it's kind of, it has that idea of building soil, keeping the mulch in place and building up the biology, but at the same time, the plastic could be problematic. Uh, I don't know. What do you think, Vivian or Todd?
Well, I agree, and this is where soil ecology, applied soil ecology, has to compromise and meet farmer realities, especially when we're talking about scale. Um, Ideally, they would be sowing cover crops or doing at least a mulch layer instead of plastic, but on large surfaces, that can be hard for people, and especially some people have issues with cover crops because of the lack of rainfall. And the idea with the plastic, I imagine, in a climate like Spain, is the lack of rainfall. And the intention is to increase moisture, but with the sunshine that also is hitting on that black plastic and the temperature that is going up, um, this soil food web, and especially the fungi who are like the pioneer species, and the mycorrhizal, the saprophytic and mycorrhizal fungi, they colonize much, 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 much slower in these uh, heat conditions. The heat also might be creating, like Joe said, anaerobic conditions where they won't be spreading even if there is more moisture. And then there's, you know, how much of that heat is evaporating the moisture away. It's not ideal, but like Jo said, she said it perfectly. If it's a temporary measure that is part of a longer term design and solution towards a regenerative, a more effective plan that might require more time organizing or resource building in order to, or new equipment in order to carry out, um, then look, we're not seeking perfection, we're seeking improvement one step at a time.
Excellent. Well, let's get on to the next question.
I made a bunch of notes here for that one.
Oh, go ahead, Todd.
So, and I'm glad Joe mentioned the microplastics because they are very ubiquitous now. I mean, they're just in everything. And you're just adding insult to injury when you're putting it down. And I understand the production end and the production reason for the black plastic, but you know, I've done a lot of work over the years with service crops, and we call them service crops or cover crops because they're servicing the next crop coming in, which is usually the cash crop, right? So I've done a lot of work and I've seen some really dramatic things occur with service crops, especially with competitive exclusion. And some of these quickly growing perennial, well, we'll say annual crops and grasses can do almost the same thing when it comes to outcompeting these antagonistic weeds that may be an issue. I'm not really sure the exact situation, but we really can't be as successful with just doing cover crops or just doing biology. It's really a mutualistic relationship, and if you use one with the other, you'll see some real benefits from it.
Makes perfect sense to me. We've got a few more questions and not quite as much time, so let's jump in here. Um, this question is from Charles from San Diego. He says, I've been an organic landscape designer in San Diego for 30 years, and now as a soil food web student, I want to design scapes regeneratively. Presently, I'm looking at over 100 golf courses here in San Diego. Panelists, have you had any luck with golf course managers?
Mhm.
Any chance golf could move to regenerative?
Yeah, I've had some real experiences in golf, but if you guys want to go first, me? Yeah, so um, Charles, that's golf courses are real challenging, and it's a mindset too. Instead of saying it's a problem, it's definitely a challenge. But um, when you get into those kind of situations with conventional systems like golf courses, one of the largest, most conventional, most challenging, is this you got to understand on a person on a we'll say a business level, the superintendents are really under the gun. They go through a lot of the superintendents of golf courses. It's a revolving door, and it's very difficult. They're really challenged, and they move a lot unless those greens are perfect. So it's really hard to manage a golf course organically or regeneratively or biologically, and follow the same guidelines that they expect, that perfect turf. Um, and so I think there's a transition, and when you're working with these commercial landscapes and golf courses, you need to design a 3 to 5 year program with them and get that commitment. And it also depends on the budget, and it depends on the golf course. I think there's a place for what we do, but it's still it's minimal because of the perfection that's required, and they can't really let anything rest. They can't allow the weeds to come in, even if it's only 5 to 10%. So it's challenging, but we do have more tools in our toolbox than we had before to manage turf. And I could spend an hour talking about what those challenges are and what we have available. But I mean, to lay the foundation with biology, it can be done. I don't know if Vivian or Joe remembers Tim Livingston up in Canada, but he worked with some golf courses up there in Canada, and they were very successful incorporating soil biology with the conventional. You just have to understand soil chemistry and the pesticides that they use, and how can you work around those pesticides. Um, I'll just say it's challenging, but it's definitely doable. It's like I was talking about with the landscape company. It can be done, but it is definitely an art, and it takes time. It's not like a quick change around because it's a real transition. As you guys know, these soils are pretty dead. There's not a lot of biology in those soils, so it's a challenge.
And I just want to run off of what Todd is saying is um, I think golf courses typically use 4 to 10 times more pesticides than agriculture producers do. And I think maybe the win here for the planet is just seeing with soil biology and other types of nutrition that are compatible with the microbes, how much can we get that reduced?
Good
And
point. Excellent.
not necessarily aim to get rid of it. And because you're dealing with people like Todd said who are under the gun,
Hmm.
and to set up trial plots to not have them risk their whole site and kind of make them rest easy and get them to understand that it will take time. It will take time because of the level of toxicity and maybe the amount of inputs at the beginning will require a lot more um, inputs in terms of biologically compatible nutrition at the beginning because of the toxicity and how long it will take.
Yeah, that's good, Vivian. It's that acceptance. I'm trying to get the community to accept less perfection. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, the next question here is actually for Vivian. In your case study, could you please describe a little the compost extract sprayer that you used? Was it just drenching the soil on top or drilling the extract subsurface too? What was the initial application schedule? Thank you, Sophia.
Hi, Sophia. Um, Beautiful name, wisdom. Um, so the initial thing that we did at the beginning was just drenching, soil drenching, but it was spraying kind of the foliage all at once, broadcast spraying. And when I explained it to him, like his soils were in the intensive care unit, and so he was just out there putting, I think 60 gallons an acre, like a huge amount of extract. Um, and the initial trial he did 3 passes in a month. So that's a lot. And in general, um, over time, we're treating the seeds. We're treating as the seeds go down. And now with the strip till, we have modified the strip tiller to treat at a depth. We've modified his seeder, so we're treating the seeds in many ways and with different products, depending on the varieties. And then from there, he's treating every time he passes, sometimes when he passes the Roland stem or which was, it's called an orbis, but it controls the vegetation in these strip till models, um, to just to make use of the pass and stack the functions. And you saw just the general broadcast sprayer. So um, the schedule, I mean, he's just the reason why they ended up getting investigated because he was just always spraying. I mean, he had 2,000 acres to cover, which takes like, I think the whole process takes 1 month to cover the whole farm. Um, or maybe that's just when he's seeding and strip tilling and preparing and all things. But I think they get hit, the whole farm receives at least 4 treatments of nettle ferments and compost extract a year. And in some situations, we'll add in specific bacteria just in case, even though they are most likely already in the compost. That's his decision. I hope that answered your question.
Brilliant. Thank you for that explanation. Hopefully we can get 2 more questions in here. The next question is for Todd. And Todd, I also saw we had a few requests in the chat to come back and do a turf specialized webinar. But this question says, for me, one of the most interesting ways Todd's work was featured in the foundation courses was when he grew plants on his compost to get mycorrhizae established in the compost. In the meantime, I have learned more about AMF bait cultures, the 4 months it takes and the months of starvation you have to apply to them, so they develop fully mature AMF spores. I'm wondering how effective it was getting AMF spores in the compost this way. Do you ever do spore counts? Did you end up working with propagules, root fragments with endospores that remained in the compost? This question is from Frederick.
Awesome, Frederick. What a great question. It just happens recently, I've been working on a project like that. Um, I think the key point here is that one of the things that I learned to do is really observe and figure out how to mimic nature, from making our compost to making our extracts to applying it, the equipment we use. So, through, just observation, even when I was doing the Governor's Island project, I was thinking about all the different, it was a real polyculture project, and it had a lot of different plant species and groups. And I kind of took the different groups that were similar biologically speaking and grew them in the composts that we were extracting and making compost extract and active teas with. Because I think through observation, it seemed to me the missing link in really good ecologically complete compost was the root exudates to feed those communities of microbes. And those root exudates are basically specific. They're very specific to those different groups of plants. So the only way that you're going to really mimic and make an ideal compost or extract is using those plant exudates to feed the microbes that are in the compost. So it kind of made sense to me back then. That was like 2014. So I said I didn't really have a name for it. I just called them ecopiles. But just recently, I'm still working on a project in Chicago, um, where it's kind of a historical land location. It was the World Fair in Chicago. And this project, they brought me in, and they were in their second year at maintaining, retaining heritage, local heritage biology. Specifically, the primary focus at the time was mycorrhizal spores. And so what they did is they excavated the soil from the site because it was just a lot of it was a wooded site, and they wanted to preserve the local indigenous heritage mycorrhizal BAM spores. And so they hired an ecologist, Efron, who I'm still working with, to maintain and preserve those heritage mycorrhizal spores. So they weren't really sure how well this was going to work. I think we're into like the third year now. And so what they did is they installed this soil into those big dumpster bins. I think there's like 6 dumpster, the really big dumpster bins. And then basically to maintain those spores, we put different species of plants, like cover crops, like the ecopiles that I was doing, to maintain the spores and grow them out. And we just recently did a recent test, and the test that Efron does is like this. They have to screen out the spores, and they float the spores will float in water, and he counts them, literally counts the spores to do the quantitative spore sampling. And what happened is of the 6 bins, I think there was maybe 2 or 3 that were very successful at increasing the amount of spores. And so what we did is we did an inoculum with those 2 or 3 bins out of the 6, and we inoculated the other bins with those spores. And sure enough, now all the bins are, we've increased the levels. I think it was like, I can't remember the exact number, but it averaged, I think it was like 56% or something. It was like about the same as if you were to buy a mycorrhizal product in a product, it was a little above that, the inoculum that we were using. So very successful project. So, maybe offline I can work with Frederick if he wants any information from that project. But yeah, it's directly kind of related to his question there. And is my first experience working with a mycologist that was doing the actual quantitative testing with the mycorrhizal spores and doing the cover crops on it. And there were very specific species of cover crops that were put in these bins that stimulated the AMF spores in particular. And I know that at certain times of the year we would basically cut the plants because the plants, right, they send out a response to the spores. Maybe you can talk a little bit further about that, Joe or Vivian, if you want to kind of get involved in this conversation. Yes, no?
Joe, you
Leaving.
want to go for it? I'm
I,
thinking of our time in Oregon together doing these SIFT tests.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's why I
oh
wanted to bring you
yeah,
in.
yeah, we collected AMS spores and we sifted them
Yep.
using different size sieves. But going back to the actual inoculating your plants and the method that Todd was talking about, I think you left with cutting down the plants. I imagine you cut the plants at the close to the soil surface, which then tricks the mycorrhizae to produce the spores.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a term for
And
that. I can't remember it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and that's what you would use to inoculate your next set of plants with the actual root propagules or the actual root
right.
that
Yeah.
that the spores are connected to, and that has the height that has the actual arbuscular structures inside the root system, and you
But it's a
transplant that. Yeah,
timing thing too, though, right? I
yeah.
mean, in the Northeast where we are, you have winter. So
Yeah.
one thing I wasn't aware of is that timing, when to cut those plants to stimulate the spore development. But yes, thank you, Joe.
Yeah, that's a I'm not sure if you cut them at the reproductive stage. I'm not sure if if it's a particular life cycle of the plant
Mhm.
where you cut them, not necessarily the weather conditions, but I'm not sure if you would cut them at the vegetative stage or when they're flowering. I guess the question is when would be the most effective time in the plant's growth
It's
What
where
I've
specific
heard, what
specific
I've
time
heard
when
on
the
this, whoops, sorry.
no, it's okay. I know it's a specific time. I don't know if it's time as much as Joe, like Joe said, it's to stimulate a specific exudate at a certain time to grow for the spores. Yeah, I don't know what that
Well,
is.
mm, mm,
I I think some of the research is pretty conclusive that they need at least 3 months of being fed through photosynthetic exudates before they have enough energy stored up to sporulate. Um, and so cutting them before that period would not make sense. I think also it was Dr. John Kemp's work that demonstrated where the exudates are going at the different lifestyle
Hmm.
stages of the plant. And basically, when they go into fruit fill or grain fill, um, all of the exudates are going into the grain or fruit anyways, and the soil food the plant stops feeding that relationship. And so I think if we wanted to mimic that, it would be at that time, cut it off, or it's being cut off anyways at that point by the plant itself. You don't even need to cut it down. There we go.
Yep.
But
Absolutely
Frederick, you
fascinating.
probably know all this already.
What a great question. Thank you for that, Frederick. Well, I think we've got one more and we might go over just a couple minutes here if that's okay. But the last question to wrap it up from Mel Tonkin is how can we get decision makers to think about the soil food web biology when trying to find ways to tackle the climate crisis and the deterioration of landscapes? I always hear this topic discussed in terms of technology, never in terms of biology. Vivian, do you want to take that one first?
This is a very good question. This keeps coming down to the need to make the knowledge accessible to the public and lawmakers, and in how we communicate it. Um, the level of scientific brilliance in the foundation courses might not be the kind of packaging that the message needs to be for lawmakers and people who are not just working to help promote life and biodiversity, but we're also dealing with a heavy lobby. Uh, that is, I've been talking to politicians. I get asked to talk to politicians every 2 years or so, people working in parliament. Um, that's the kind of one place so far that one person just hasn't been enough because of the power of the corporate influence. And so I think it's about building a movement together as a community and making our message loud and clear and focusing. Something I needed to understand. I tried to understand. I was an activist for so long. I was trying to change the world around me in this way by trying to make movements to convince the world to do things. And it took me a while to understand that we had to focus more on just building our community and making it bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and making our presence stronger and our influence stronger. And the making us a bigger stakeholder to the people in charge. That's might sound a little bit jaded, but it's not. It's kind of the way out is in, and together. I'm gonna stop there, see if anybody else wants to say anything. I'm sorry if that was vague.
Well, from my experience, these decision makers need to get their head out of the sand and look around because, there's a lot of success around the world using soil food web technology. I mean, it's everywhere. You can't ignore it. And I think when it affects them financially in a negative way, then change will come. Because obviously, as we all know, the conventional um, toxic technology is coming to an end. Um, and so it doesn't mean we can't all play in the sandbox that they have their heads stuck in, but it does mean that there is, a an alternative and a way to save money and also protect the environment and protect humans. So again, it's at that level, like Vivian and I've been in discussions, I've been around politicians and industry and state and corporate projects. And I find that unless everybody's at the table
Yeah.
making the decisions on these projects, it doesn't always flow well and it rarely becomes successful unless everyone is at the table and agrees. So
Yeah.
that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, and but I sorry, Joe, if you wanted to jump in. I just like Todd was talking about how farmers are on their knees right now, and I think we need to focus on empowering them
Hmm.
instead of trying to change a system that doesn't want to change. Uh, Joe, I know you want to jump in on this.
No, I think you guys got it covered. How do we get decision makers to think about it? I say just connect with local organizations that already have a large network of land stewards. For instance, that was one of the things that I did when I first started doing this work is I connected with nonprofits that already have the farm connection and just offer them education as much as possible. Just get the
Yeah.
word out there. And eventually they will start trusting you, start becoming more confident in the information. You'll plant some seeds in their minds and they'll start to seek information on their own. And then you'll start, um, and then next thing you know, it just, it just, you kind of, it'll just start to ripple. The change will just start to ripple. Um, it is sometimes unfortunate though, where there are other organizations in my province that work with the farmers, or even not just my province, but other provinces here in Canada as well, where they focus too much on nitrogen management. So that's another thing. I feel
Yeah.
like it's a stepping stone where they try to reduce the use of fertilizer, but they call it nutrient, not even nutrient management, but nitrogen management. There's still a very narrow focus on one nutrient. And that's what they teach their farmers, these large organizations, especially in the prairies. Um, but we need to think beyond nitrogen. We need to think biological management and not just nitrogen management. And so how to change those types of uh I guess mindset. Um yeah, just keep putting yourself out there. Just keep putting out the work out there and it works. The thing is the soul food web approach works. And I think this is something that I was talking to Vivian about yesterday where we serve that bridge, right? As Elaine students and as the practitioners of her methods, we are now serving the bridge between this knowledge and the actual land stewards out there, the people that are actually out there tending the land. And so our role now is to open up that knowledge to them and hopefully guide them into looking beyond the narrow vision of industrial agriculture and looking at ecosystem health instead. So I think it's getting there. I think it needs to happen at a grassroots level, and then it'll, uh, like Todd said, it's almost like they have no choice now. Fertilizer costs, synthetic costs, commodity crop costs. Well, synthetic inputs are becoming much more expensive. Commodity crops, much cheaper. And so if you have a farmer that's been relying on synthetic inputs, and the crops that they're selling, commodity crops, the prices have lowered, that's where those farmers will start to understand that they need to go an alternative way. And then they're going to start to push when they see the results, like what Vivian and Todd have been showing, then they're going to start to push back against industry. And then now industry are going to be forced to change themselves.
Yeah, and if I could just add one more thing quickly on this, Evan, because I think it's super important. Um, the farmer unions, the farmer organizations and groups, like Joe was saying, I know the president of the National Farmers Union in Canada is a farmer who has a microscope and is applying compost tea and compost extract and has done the work and the courses and being in communication with these key stakeholders. Yes, Vanessa. Um, and there's another one too. Is it Allison something? Um, but they regularly meet with key parliamentary and government bodies, and us being in communication with them while we were all panicking, or while there was panic about the pandemic and everything in the news was about that. Um, in 2020, in December, was it December 2021, the Canadian government passed a law that it would no longer, the Canadian Food Inspecting Agency would no longer renew the registrations on all agriculture products that come from the sea. So that's liquid seaweed, that's liquid fish, and that just kind of went silently under the radar, and nobody heard about it. And I work with that kind of industry here, the fishermen, the people who are recycling those products. They told me, I brought it to the National Farmers Union, and they have been pushing why. At the same time, the government has increased the um, the rights of use of glyphosate. So just keep pushing, and these two products, algae, seaweed, kelp, fish, are so needed if we're going to do this kind of practice. So sorry, I'm going to stop talking, but just keep talking with each other. Just keep talking.
Thank you, Vivian, and thank you all for being here today. We're a few minutes over time, but really want to say thank you for dedicating your lives to this work and to this mission. And to the points on the last question, I think there's an inevitability. We've got to right our relationship with nature and work with her and not against her. And the writing's on the wall everywhere we look. It seems like most of the major companies these days are smallholder family farms or people in their backyards are at least trying to talk about regenerative agriculture. And I think it's up to communities like this to both hold them to account to being genuine and the buzzwords that they put, on their corporate statements, but also supporting them and doing that work with the how. And I think that's what folks like yourself bring to the world is once the why is there, is how to really move forward. So um, this has been Generations of Soil Food Web Practice Across Landscapes. Next week, we're back with Soil as National Defense. Thank you all for joining us. I hope you enjoyed. Please, if you enjoyed this, subscribe to our YouTube, to our email list, follow us on social media, spread this material with your friends and your networks and your families. It's important work and an important mission, and we're all a part of this together as one big global community. So that's all from us, and we hope to see you next time.
Thanks, Evan.
Thanks.
Great
Thank you,
job.
everybody.